Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Future of XYZ. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that perhaps many of you aren't familiar with. It is the future of purpose trust. And with us, we have Natalie Reitman-White, an American living up just north of our American border. She's a sought-after educator and consultant. She is nationally recognized for her work in purpose trust, really in transformative ownership and investment models that are unusual today, but are growing in popularity. She started that work back in a company that she had worked in called Organically Grown, which she'll have the chance to talk about, which was one of the very first in the United States companies to transform into a purpose trust. So Natalie, thank you so much for joining us on Future of XYZ.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Well, I want to start. Your company that you founded in 2023 called Purpose Owned is helping this transition into more purpose trusts, perpetual purpose trust, PPTs as they're known for short. Let's start, as we always do on Future of XYZ, defining what is a purpose trust.
Sure. So a lot of people are familiar with trusts that hold assets on behalf of people. So maybe you put assets into a trust that will benefit your future family members. Purpose trusts are unique in that they hold assets for an ongoing purpose rather than a person as a beneficiary. So you can put an asset into a trust and ensure that whatever that asset does, say it's a company that generates profits, that those profits and the operation of the company continue to benefit an ongoing purpose rather than directly a person. So what that means is if you transfer ownership of a company into a trust, the company is permanently independent and not for sale. No human actually owns the company anymore. It's owned by and for its purpose. And you can designate what are the things that you want the company to benefit through its operations and through its profits.
I'm curious, given that setup, right? There are many differences, therefore, between a family office or a foundation, or even just a normal C corporation or S corporation, or even a B, a beneficial corporation. What is that like? Just to drive home the point, what is that major difference?
Yeah, so you're not replacing the corporation itself. So these are still corporations. They can be a benefit corporation, a C corporation, an LLC. What you're replacing is the owner. So typically, ownership of companies is held by individuals who are stockholders, be it founders who founded a company, family members who have inherited the shares, employees that have bought into the ownership, or maybe the founders have sold to external investors who are now shareholders in the company, or even a publicly traded firm. So shareholders are typically the owners of companies, be them private or public. And what we're doing is we're replacing the shareholder with a purpose. So purpose is now the owner of the company. And what's really cool about a purpose is a purpose, unlike a human, will never die and can stay committed to a set of values and ensure the company stays committed to a set of values. So what's unique about that is oftentimes founders of companies, they founded the company because they're passionate about offering a product or service. But they're concerned about who the next owner will be that will ensure that they run the company in the same set of values that they have. Oftentimes, founders are concerned about taking care of their employees that they've had long-term relationships with, taking care of staying rooted in their communities in which they operate, benefiting their supply chain and maintaining those partnerships with the people who they've purchased from over time or their customers. And so when you have humans as owners, you have to trust the next humans to keep the company on track with your values. And instead, what we're doing is we're replacing humans as owners with a purpose as an owner, and you can define what that purpose is, who you want the company to continue to work with, where you want it to continue to stay, and who you want it to continue to benefit. So we're basically redesigning a new owner that will never die, will always keep with the same set of values. And the other cool thing about a purpose as an owner is it doesn't need anything. So humans and shareholders, we need income. We need to often sell a company or sell stock in a company to create value for ourselves. But with the purpose trust, it never needs any income. So the money that a company makes, it can simply reinvest back into itself. And most importantly, it can share the profits with people who are creating the value in the company over time, which I think is
the employees. Yeah, interesting. So this seems reasonably new. I know when you were at organically grown company, which is essentially a organic food co-op of growers in one of the largest in the country, where you spent almost 2 decades in various operations and HR and type roles. It was one of the first, and that was only in 2018. Yves Chouinard of Patagonia, I think, just moved into this model, and I want to talk about that case study for a minute as an example in 2022. So this is relatively new as a structure, but gaining traction. Is it a U.S. only thing? Is it international? Does it actually matter?
Yeah, so a purpose trust is a designation that is available in certain U.S. states. So there are to date about 14 U.S. states that allow for these types of trusts to hold assets, including companies. And there are more states passing legislation. But it's actually related to, and while this is new in the United States, it's actually related to some models that are older internationally. So in Europe, there are historic examples of companies that have been owned by trusts similar to a purpose trust, where the trust owns the company, and the goal is to never sell the company, to ensure the company stays independent, and the profits of the company are reinvested back into the company, shared with the people creating the value, often employees, as well as can sometimes go to the community through charitable trusts and foundations. So there's some historic examples in Europe of some very successful companies that have been around for a long time that have been stayed privately held, owned by a trust that is dedicated to a purpose versus individual benefit, and benefiting charities and other causes. An example is Bosch. Bosch has been owned this way for nearly 100 years. John Lewis Partnerships in the UK.
So big retailer as far as John Lewis, a department store, and then Bosch, the giant, durable goods, if you will, white goods company.
Yeah, and there's some interesting history across both of those companies that I named. My understanding was the founders of those companies didn't believe in just passing on their companies to their kids and inherited wealth. They believed that it should really be about passing the companies on to the best people who would steward the company into the future, whether that was their kids or other leaders for the company, and that the company should really share the value back with the people who are working in the companies, not just for the value to go to their family heirs. So they set up these structures more than 100 years ago to do that, and they're still thriving today.
It's amazing. I mean, one of the big questions that I have, and before we get to the Patagonia case study briefly, because of course everything on Future of XYZ is quite quick, and this is a complex topic, but what kinds of companies? So you've just named, we have a couple of clothing retailers, we have an appliance company, we have retailer, like what are, and a food co-op, what are some of the kinds of use cases that you're seeing in the consulting that you're doing and that you know about?
Yeah, it's exciting because there are all sorts of companies. So I just recently worked with a company that was founded by teachers to create innovative science education tools. So their purpose is to promote science literacy. And they started the company over 40 years ago. And they've grown into a large company that creates and manufactures and supplies science education products for teachers from kindergarten through university. And they were interested in keeping the company independent, making sure that it's continuing to be run by people who are internal to the company, who are connected to that mission. They actually hire a large part of their workforce as former teachers who design, develop the products and do their customer service and so forth. And so they put their company into a purpose trust so that it continues on its purpose of promoting science literacy through its products and services. And the profits will basically go back into their innovation of new products.
The R&D.
sharing with their employees, as well as they do a lot of advocacy and giving around policy work that expands science education.
That's amazing. And I mean, in my research for this, and you and I had met at the 1% for the Planet conference where you were speaking with Patagonia's lawyer actually about their transition. And I was really fascinated then because the way that you guys explained it in just a couple of slides was so apparent. And I think it's visually the representation of the umbrella of the trust then feeding into the employees, into the beneficiaries, whoever they're designated, including it could be a 501c3, so a nonprofit. It could be the R&D. I mean, this is just a really interesting model, as you said, that continues in perpetuity versus, having a risk of dilution, I guess, of core mission or purpose.
I find there are entrepreneurs in all types of businesses. So I've worked with restaurants. I've worked with home goods manufacturing companies who want to keep craft manufacturing alive in America. So they want to put their company into purpose trust so that their business doesn't get bought and sold and end up in the hands of a large international firm that moves manufacturing overseas and dilutes the quality and changes the job. So from craft manufacturing to education, there's a large healthcare company that provides home healthcare workers that also has put their company into purpose trust for this purpose of benefiting those workers who tend to be pretty low wage workers and not have a lot of voice, to ensure that they have a say in their work and get to benefit economically and have control over their work moving forward. So all different industries, different things that they're passionate about protecting and ensuring that those missions endure over time and that the people doing the work towards those missions are rewarded.
I love that. And I also think it's really interesting, and there are a bunch of questions that are coming for me, but I now name dropped and alluded to Patagonia enough times. I do want to just like a quick minute or so, Natalie, to the best of your ability, explain, because I think most of Future of XYZ's listeners and viewers will be familiar at least with the company, but what they may not be full of them having gone to.
Yeah. So their founder, like many, there's a whole wave of baby boomers. They say that about 12 million baby boomers have ownership interests in businesses right now. And surveys have been done recently that a lot of them have not figured out their succession plans yet for ownership. So there's a big wave coming of ownership transition. And what are their options? They can give their company to their heirs and hope that their heirs are interested in continuing to run the company and operate the company. More and more, that's not true. Kids have other interests. They want to move on to other careers. So heirs are often not an option. Another option could be they could potentially sell their companies to their employees. But not all employees necessarily have the means to buy a company, especially a very valuable company, or the interest in necessarily being owners of the company. So, they've looked at their heirs, they've looked at their employees, and they're looking for other solutions. And so then it's a matter of, can I find a values-aligned buyer that I can assure will keep the company on track? But as I was saying, you might find a values-aligned buyer once, but who will be the buyer after them and the buyer after them? And so founders that have really put their heart and souls into founding companies, building up a culture, really they care about the future employment of their employees, how they operate their business. They care about their level of quality and service that they provide to their customers. They care about the supply chain relationships. They're thinking very carefully about their succession plan. And this was the position that Patagonia was in. Their founders were aging and trying to find a succession plan for the company. And so they decided that putting their company in a purpose trust was their answer. So what they've done is they actually donated the company into a purpose trust. So a purpose now owns the company. Again, the purpose will never die, never needs to take any value of the company. It can hold the company forever. And in their purpose trust, they've stipulated that Patagonia needs to be run with the same set of values that it has been run with thus far. So they've been a leader in environmental sustainability, and stewardship through their business practices, and they will continue to do so. But Patagonia generates a lot of value. It's a large company. So what happens if it's owned by a purpose with the profits? So they did something unique with this model where they added on a nonprofit in addition to the trust. The trust owns the company, has control of the company, ensures it stays independent. And the nonprofit is there to get what we call dividend rights, or basically it gets 98% of the profits that the company generates. So the nonprofit is dedicated to fighting climate change. So in this way, the founder was able to lock in the legacy that the company will continue on as an independent company run by people within the company. They'll continue to make the decisions, reinvest in the company, reinvest in products and innovation, provide good wages and benefits to employees, invest in their supply chain, and then excess profits flow over to a nonprofit that doesn't have control of the company. It can't sell the company. The nonprofit takes the profits of the company and is dedicated to putting those resources towards climate change. So in this way, the Chenard family has locked in a business that's a for-profit business, but that through its operations and through its profits is literally in business to save the home planet.
Well, thank you for just mentioning what Patagonia's mission statement of to save our home planet is, because I've taken for granted in this conversation, we keep talking about purpose, and purpose is such a, I'm a brand strategist. I build brands, and purpose, mission, vision, values, these are things that are really important. And over the course of the last 5 to 10 years, purpose is really become elevated in the brand speak world, which is it's the same in many ways as mission or vision, which is why does a company exist? And so we've been talking about purpose, trust, and the whole idea, of course, is the initial or current and formulation of a company. Its purpose is, why does it exist? Why does it make profits? Why does it do whatever it's doing? And it's aligned to its values as well. So I just thank you for mentioning what Patagonia's mission statement is, what their purpose is, which is climate activism, but also to save our home planet, because that's in fact what that trust that you're working on is ensuring is the purpose, alignment to purpose. So one of the things, were you going to say something, Natalie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the things I love about these structures is you actually put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, your structure where your mouth is. So a lot of companies will say, we're all about our purpose, our mission of why we exist. But at the end of the day, they're still owned by shareholders, and those shareholders can change, and they can change the purpose, and they can change the direction of the company. And they're also the ones who get to reap all the financial returns that are created. And so what we're doing with the Purpose Trust is we're not just only saying this is our purpose in what we do through our operations, but we're actually shifting the ownership to the purpose so that that purpose is locked in into perpetuity. It's not going to change with future owners. And that the proceeds and the financial value that the company generates actually goes in part back to its purpose, whether its purpose is benefiting a community, keeping craft manufacturing alive, saving the home planet, ensuring that employees are paid the best wages and benefits. So this is a way to actually take it beyond just operations to actually lock it into ensuring it's the guiding compass for the company over time, and ensuring that it's where the value that's created goes over time.
Well, something that I hadn't thought about actually up until you just were describing that, and yes, it's in the definition that it's in perpetuity. But I mean, in capitalism, especially in publicly traded organizations, we don't look at things past kind of a quarter. I mean, it's really short term, which of course is how a lot of the damage to humans, and our planet has been done. And what I really appreciate and enjoy about the whole conversation of the Purpose Trust is that it is taking a longer term view. It is, in fact, taking a perpetual view of saying, this is why we exist. So long as we're in business, so long as we're throwing off profits, which is our goal as a corporation, obviously, we are going to continue, living up to our commitments and our mission, our purpose. So I like that long-termism versus the short-termism. Something that as we have to kind of wrap up the last question before I throw it to like the true future, and where you see it going, I think something that's really important in this conversation is a conversation that's coming up a lot. ESG, the G is governance overall, and AI, and all sorts of topics right now is de facto top of mind. What I'm curious about, governance seems very important in a purpose trust. It's kind of critical. Just very briefly, how do you see governance vis-a-vis the purpose trust? Is it different than in other corporations, or is it actually easier?
So governance in a purpose trust is, so you have people who have to represent the trust as the stand-in for the owner. And so they're responsible for appointing the board of directors at the company and ensuring the board delivers results to keep the company healthy and deliver results to the purpose over time through its delivery of products and services and how it spends the money that it makes. So that trust stewardship committee is a very important role. The Trust Stewardship Committee is appointed by the founders who put the company into the trust to begin with. And then there's a method of succession that is built into the trust agreement moving forward. And it's selected on merit. So who are people who have demonstrated the capacity to ensure the company stays on track to the purpose? So what we find in these structures, it's actually an opportunity to bring new people into governance. So in a traditional corporation, those with money have governance. They have power. So the more shares you own, the more power you have to elect the board of directors, sit on the board of directors, change the board of directors.
As we just saw in higher education.
Yes, correct. And so now what we're saying is there's actually a stewardship group, and they're responsible for ensuring there's a board appointed who delivers results to the purpose. And that stewardship group is bound to ensure that they hire the next good stewards to replace them, and so on and so forth. That'll keep the company on track to that purpose. And so frequently, those groups include stakeholders who are close to the purpose. So we've seen in purpose trusts, potentially employees having a seat on that stewardship group, people who represent some of the causes and things that the company wants to benefit through its purpose. Like we saw one purpose trust I helped you, they have a strong environmental commitment as part of their purpose, and they have an environment representative on their trust stewardship committee that's there to make sure that the company is delivering good results to nature. So it can be an opportunity to diversify governance based on merit and people who have demonstrated leadership qualities of steering the company to good results and the purpose over time. And it's not just about who has the most money gets to make the governance decisions.
More equitable in that sense. So as a last question, I mean, there's so many more questions that I have, but as we look towards the future, this is only growing in popularity. You started your company, just last year, really with the aim of kind of expanding some real lighthouse companies who can show what impact looks like, show what this model can do. What's your greatest hope, say 10 to 20 years from now in terms of the future of Purpose Trust?
I'd like this to be a mainstream alternative that people look at when they're looking at company ownership succession. We've known for centuries now, inheritance has been a main method of passing ownership succession. And then in the last 100 years, money has been the main way of passing succession. So I'm ready to move on. I sell my company to the next person buys it and sells it again. And so this I see as a third way of passing ownership, which is through stewardship. So it's a way of putting your company into a purpose and ensuring that there's a stewardship group that stewards that purpose and they can pass it on to the next stewards. And then, that the proceeds from the company go back to that purpose that you set up. So I see this as a third way of holding ownership. And I see a lot of companies across the spectrum of industries with different purposes being interested in doing this as a potential ownership succession plan. And so I would see that this would be an option that your CPA and your lawyer would offer you that would be taught in business schools, even not only from a succession planning standpoint, but even setting up a company. So young entrepreneurs could have the option of setting up a purpose trust alongside themselves And after they start and grow the company and are able to get some value out of it, they can transition 100% over to the Purpose Trust to carry on the company past them. So I see this as a third way of holding ownership that I think will be part of capitalism 2.0 in terms of a lot of people are talking about purpose-driven companies, as you said, talking about how we have more responsible capitalism where we keep entrepreneurship driving value, but we ensure that value goes back to communities, to workers,
and then non-destructive.
Yeah, to the environment. And so this is a way to have capitalism, but with a twist. It's capitalism that gives back to a purpose beyond just generating wealth for shareholders.
Well, Natalie, super interesting conversation. For anyone interested in learning more, all you have to do is Google Purpose Trust. You can also check out Natalie's work at purposeowned.com and reach out if you have questions. But thank you again for joining us on this week's episode of Future of XYZ.
Thanks for having me.
For everyone watching and listening, make sure that you leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can watch on YouTube at our presenting partner, Rhode Island PBS, which is ripbs.org/XYZ. Follow us on Instagram. And if you want to learn more about Future of XYZ, nominate yourself or someone you know as a guest. In this season 5, our 5th year, please visit future-of.xyz. We will see you again in 2 weeks' time. Natalie, thank you for your expertise on the future of Purpose Trust.
Thank you.